Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Glenn has held his doctorate in psychology for more than 30 years and is also a former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leave the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Now, before we get started, if you haven't yet downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
I am here with a kind-hearted woman named Biddy, who has agreed to share this time with you so you can benefit from her experience and strength and wisdom and hope, as well as her trials and tribulations and stumbles and falls. Right, Biddy?
That's right, Glenn, yes.
Yeah. What time zone are you calling from?
In the UK, so it's 5 p.m. here.
Oh, okay. Okay, very nice. It's just a Sunday night before dinner. That's nice of you to join us. Biddy, could you tell us a little bit about your history with food?
I don't remember a time in my life when I didn't have a very strange and obsessive relationship with food. It started in childhood, and because I was always quite a heavy child, my mum was concerned about that, and I was on diets from the age of sort of 6 or 7, and that's pretty much what I remember. I was either always dieting or I was secretly eating, and I didn't realize for many years that there was a name for it, that other people did it. I thought that was just me. And one day I'd find the right diet that would fix me and put me back together. And
Sure.
Yeah, so that was sort of my life, really.
What happened at its worst? How heavy did you get? What was it like inside your head? What was at the worst?
Oh, goodness. I had a long phase of the worst, really. So I got to high, very heavy weight when I was 19, 20, and I was trying so hard. I moved countries then. I moved to the UK, but I was trying so hard to lose the weight. I was always up and down and up and down. And then I probably hit my highest in my late 20s when my dad died, and I just didn't handle any of that very well.
Sorry.
Binging was the only way I knew how to cope with anything, the good or the bad. And so, of course, that just made me spiral. In my 30s then, I joined this slimming club and really lost weight. And I thought I'd found the panacea, I'd found it. The problem was I was still binging, but I was binging on foods that didn't make me gain. I was eating terrible diet foods and everything. And so I thought I'd work it all out. That's right. Yes, I was the sweetener queen. Everything was just artificial, what I was consuming. And I started exercising, then obsessively. Then I cut back on the food I was eating, and I didn't realize for a long time that I then slipped into bulimia territory.
Exercise bulimia, or were you purging also?
I was purging as well then. At some point, I was exercising so much and eating so little that my weight loss stalled. My body just tried to protect me, which I didn't realize then. I thought it was against me, and I had to push it that much harder to make it lose more. So I also then brought purging into the mix, and that went on for a good few years. And that was probably my lowest. And although I was at my lowest weight then, and of course, everybody was celebrating that, I was also at my very worst in my head. It was dark. Like, I was very depressed. I didn't know really that I was, because you get very good at playing the role of who people think you are. And so I was out there always playing the part, but I was very unhappy. It was very dark. And I didn't think that there was a way out of it. I really didn't.
So what happened? I'm sorry you went through all that. What happened? How did you get out? Are you out? Do you feel like you're out of it, or are you still struggling?
I would say that I have gone from hopeless to hopeful. I have made so much progress with all of this that I know I am still progressing. I'm still climbing the mountain, but I am getting to the top of it. For a long time, I thought I was just sick and broken, and I tried therapy, and they put me on to OA, which I went to one meeting, which kind of confirmed that I couldn't do it on my own. It put me off so much because it made me feel so despondent, because I thought, how am I going to fix my past? My dad's not going to come back. And if all of this is what's making me ill and diseased, how am I going to fix that? That's impossible, isn't it? I sort of stumbled across it through another book that I'd looked at. I always say no to everything at first anyway. So that was my initial reaction too when I looked into everything. But I was listening to the podcast and I was reading on the Facebook page. I had you as a companion there. I was just listening passively. And it started to resonate and make sense. I then went home last winter to visit my family, first time in years with lockdown and everything. And I always have a really bad time with food there. Again, I thought that was something that I couldn't fix. That was just how it was. When I went home, that's how it was. When I came back from that, I signed up for the intensive because I thought it felt like this was my last ditch attempt at something.
Did you make any progress before the intensive?
I think I did, in that I was starting to build some awareness, because with all these thoughts that go on in your head, that you don't realize that this isn't really the real you, but that it's coming from a part of you that's just been misguided and that's misfiring. And it's just like junk mail in your email account. You just need to get rid of it and you just need to ignore it. But when you believe that it's all coming from you, it can be so devastating.
Yeah.
And to understand that it actually isn't, that's what made me start hoping again that I would be able to actually do this.
Because you recognize the neurological junk mail.
That's right. And actually seeing it from that more scientific point of view was a real relief, because suddenly you're just dealing with facts. You're moving away from all this heavy feelings territory and just dealing with the facts. This is neuroscience. There you go. That's what happens in your brain. You can change that. That made so much sense to me. And it was a relief to bring it into neutral territory.
When you say you've made progress since you joined the intensive, what do you mean? What's different now?
I would say that I have made years worth of changes in a few months. And the first 6 weeks were a real game changer. Like you say, it's front loaded. It's so good. It gives you so much work to do right at the start that you immediately put your foot on the accelerator and you just gain momentum, and then you can run with it. And it really helped to have something practical to do every single day to deal with this. Yeah, that's probably where the biggest turning point happened in all of this. I realized, looking back then, just a few months in, I started losing weight. Well, I've had a few episodes since, but nothing compared to how things were.
What were the pivotal insights that you got from doing that work or working with us that made the biggest difference?
It was making my own rules. I stopped dieting. Essentially, I stopped subjecting myself to someone else's rules all the time. When you make your own rules, you realize you've got it all in you. All you need is that little bit of confidence to just give it a try, to set your own boundaries and live by them. That made a huge difference, because this combination of the dieting industry combined with the voice of the pig, they both zap your confidence, because they both tell you that you can't make good choices for yourself, so you have to listen to someone else.
Yeah.
And I stopped the dieting and I just made rules that I lived by and I still live by, and they just liberated me.
You found your constructive autonomous self.
That's right.
You found permission here to work with your constructive autonomous self. And it was always there, right? In retrospect, it was just buried underneath the voices of the diet industry and the experts and so-called experts, et cetera, right?
Absolutely. What really helped me was to change the terminology of how I was talking, even just inside my head, how I was talking about myself and about my habits and about binging, etc. Because when you talk about overwhelming urges or something like that, then you immediately create this force like, oh, this is actually too big for me to handle. So I kept changing terminology based on a few things that you said in some of your podcasts. Ask different questions instead of asking, why can't I? Why am I the way I am? Is to say, well, how can I do this differently? And every time I caught myself using very strong, forceful words about myself and my binging and my past, I would always try and think of a better word for that, something that would lessen the impact. That made a really big difference.
You disputed the notion of powerlessness in language. You recognized that you'd been inculcated with these ideas that you were helpless and powerless and like a dependent little child who had to be told what to do.
Mhm.
And you said, no, I don't accept that. I'm not going to accept the idea that I have to follow your rules, and I'm not going to accept the idea that I have to use your language. You fixed it. You fixed it for yourself, and you substituted your own language, which was much more hopeful and helpful and forward-looking.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. The refutations did the trick there for me too, because you learn to give the pig that voice. And by giving it the words, you immediately bring it onto your own playing field. And I found that really helpful because it forces the pig out of the shadows, as it were. And then you realize when you do the refutations, you don't just realize that everything the pig says is a lie, but also that everything it gives as a reason to binge has nothing to do with the problem that it's using. So you start to immediately question. And just by doing that, by using your own logic, you're telling the pig who's boss. I think we give the pig too much credit sometimes for being more complex than it actually is.
Mhm.
It really isn't. It's us. We are the complex ones.
Mhm.
And we give very complicated explanations to the pig. In reality, all the pig wants is whatever it can take advantage of. It will just basically use that to try and get you to binge. The end. That's it.
And the moment that you write down what the pig is saying and you separate those destructive thoughts from your own constructive thoughts, and you say, that's not me, that's my pig, even if you can't immediately see what's wrong with what the pig is saying and how it's illogical, the moment you separate from it, you say, this is not as complicated as I thought it was. All I really have to do is ignore this thing, right?
That's right. And you immediately prove yourself to be the superior mind, because the pig can't bring any new information to the table that you didn't already know, because it can only use your information.
Mhm.
So it can't present you with a new baffling problem in your life and say, this has just happened. A few days ago, I had water coming through the ceiling in my living room, and that was a bit of an upsetting problem. And then the pig could come and say, oh, that you can't get hold of the plumber and your landlord isn't answering his phone. And so now go and binge. And you think, okay, pig, so I'll go and I'll get a bunch of junk food. And after I've eaten that, all the pipes will have fused themselves back together and the ceiling will have dried out by the end of it. Is that right? Is that what you're saying? And that's exactly what I said that out loud. I mean, I didn't actually have any urges to binge, but I thought, oh, pig, this is something that you would like to exploit now, wouldn't you? And I had a good laugh about it. It actually relaxed me quite a lot in that moment as well. But that's the only thing the pig can ever come up with, is the thing that you already know about. And you're already handling it. You're already calling the plumber. So the pig can't bring anything useful to the table other than, hey, let's go.
And then it goes, but it would taste good.
That's right. That's right.
It would taste so good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
A babbling idiot after a while.
Yeah, that's it. It has nothing to offer. It's really just a little bit of noise. And so the refutations helped me big time. The community has been really helpful. I was hesitating about doing the intensive because I'm not a big joiner as such, and I wasn't sure whether I would like being part of a community or being coached in calls with other people. Mm-hmm. But I found that to be really empowering, because I don't know if you heard of sympathetic strings in a musical instrument, but I'm really into my music. So when you play a stringed instrument like a guitar,
the harmonics that make the other ones. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Say it for the audience because they don't know.
Not every string on the instrument is played all the time. A lot of the time, the others are completely silent, but the vibration will create a harmony that makes the sound so much deeper and better. And those strings that are just vibrating silently, they're called sympathetic strings. And I thought about that the other day, and I thought, this is what we're like as humans when we show sympathy to someone else, when they're voicing their troubles and concerns, and we're just listening silently, but it resonates with us. The response that it creates is strong. There's harmony in there. There's unity in there. When you listen to a call and you listen to someone else describe their struggles and you go, oh yeah, that's right. That's really helpful. Even if you never comment on it, what does it do to you? It takes you out of your own self-pity head that feels sometimes sorry for yourself, and you feel empathy for someone else. And that's a great place to be, to try and tackle any problem.
And that's what you experienced in the community calls.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
What should I have asked you that I didn't ask you?
One thing I was thinking about the other day was right at the start of one of the mastery challenge, I think it was about, you mentioned about the magic pill. If somebody offered you a magic pill and you could just lose all the weight and you'd be sorted for the rest of your life, would you do it? Or would you go through this process? I thought about that just the other day, and then I would have said yes, because I came into this program thinking this was, for me, was all about weight loss, because I was obsessed with that still. Now I'm really grateful that there is no such thing. I'm really grateful for the struggle, actually.
Why?
There is so much reward in the struggle because you're proving that you can do something in your own strength. I climbed a mountain here a few years ago in Wales, Snowdon, which is a fantastic place, but it was raining the whole time. It was foggy, it was freezing cold, and it was hard. It was really hard to get up there. And there's a train that goes up Snowdon too. You can take a train to the summit. You don't have to walk. When I was up there, we were so elated for being there. I realized that it wasn't about being at the summit. It was how you got there. That was the worthwhile thing. That's what I'm going to remember about that day, because I got myself up there in my own strength. And that's how you grow as a person, isn't it? You never achieve anything without the struggle.
Beautiful. Yeah. You're talking to a hiker.
Yes.
I very much empathize with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's beautiful. There's nothing like that feeling when you're actually completely depleted and exhausted and so satisfied. And in a way, that's what we're doing here. Yes, of course, it's a struggle because it's hard. You're changing ingrained habits. That's always hard, but it's good. It's good pain. It's growing pain, isn't it?
It's a nice way to say that. If someone was frightened about the money or the time or talking to their spouse about it, what would you say about that? How would you help people overcome that?
Because I was thinking about that too. Could I afford it, etc. First of all, I think with this particular course, it's actually incredibly good value for money for the amount of personal attention you get all the time. It's nothing really. It's a bargain. And also, ask any binge eater or anyone who's got any problems with a particular habit they would love to shift. If they could spend X amount of money and it could be gone then, would they not do that? Of course they would. This is what's being offered here. It's an investment in yourself. People don't hesitate to save money for the holiday of their dreams or the car they want to buy or whatever it is. So this would be a really worthwhile investment in yourself, in your own health, in your mental well-being. You have to think about what you're going to get out of it rather than just what you're putting into. And sometimes actually spending a little bit of money on something is also a really good incentive because you're placing a value on something in that moment. So you're not going to just let that opportunity slip by because you've made an investment. The investment is a commitment too.
True that. Biddy, is there anything else that you want to say or mention or be sure that people know before we go?
I could probably talk for several hours about so many things that I've learned that I really appreciate.
Let's do that again if you're open to it, because this was very insightful. If you're open to it. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, anytime. But at this point, maybe just to say that I really appreciate your empathy that you always have, because it costs a lot to always be giving of yourself so much to people. But when I listen to you on the podcast, and I feel like you've become pals to me because you're usually traveling with me when I'm going to work or I'm going running or something. You're usually in my head at that time.
I'm happy to be your pal.
Yeah, I admire your capacity to give. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. Don't ever stop being like that. I think that's something that you don't really realize it's there until you're in the course, until you're doing it. I appreciate it now more than I did at the start of the intensive because I can see just the ongoing work that's being done all the time. And it's all coming from a place of care. And I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Biddy. I suffered beyond suffering for almost 30 years with this. As low down as anybody got, that's about how low I got. So the fact that I have the ability and the opportunity to change so many people's lives now is a bigger blessing than I could imagine. And I don't have kids, and I live with my cat on the beach. So what do is I think about how to help binge eaters. I take breaks and I go to yoga and I go to the beach and I listen to music and all that kind of thing. But it's very important to me. So thank you. That makes me feel very seen. I appreciate that.
Good.
So if you are open to doing it again, then email me in a month or so and we'll figure out something to put on the calendar. And I think you're someone with a tremendous amount of insight for people who've suffered, particularly since you came from a place of bulimia. people that struggle with it feel like there's very little hope out there. So I can't offer to cure it. I'm not legally allowed to do that, but I can tell you that some people say that it helps. That's the best I can tell you. So I'd love to have you on again if you're open to it.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thank you, Biddy. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. Now, if you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.